Condo Talk is back, and today we're joined by Bryan Bultz of Sentry Security Group. Hi, Bryan.
Hey, Thomas, thank you for having me.
Glad to have you here. We are all familiar with the concierge and security that sits at the front of so many city center condos, but it's not a topic that we've explored before. Sentry's got a lot of experience in this space. Before we get into it, maybe you can tell me a bit more about your background.
Well, I come from this is my second career. I was producing television shows for close to 25 years, dealing with all kinds of people, and had a very successful career. And this was in the U.S. and then came back to Canada. Worked in my industry for a little bit, and then fell into this security industry, looking at the condominium skyline and realizing that this is kind of recession proof because we keep building and building and it ain't going anywhere. So I saw a good opportunity and I went for it.
Fantastic. Well, we're here today to talk about finding the right fit. And that's something that you've experienced as you've helped these communities find the right staff for their community. Tell me a little bit more about how you approach the problem and what we're going to cover today.
Great. Well, security in condos is the most important thing. It's one of the most expensive contracts next to cleaning and property management. And it's what residents expect. They're paying a lot of money with condo fees and whatever they paid for their unit, and they expect a level of safety, and that's not too much to ask. And safety comes in many different forms, but the form of security of an actual person there, accompanied with the technology, is really the best system you have, and they expect a lot, and as they should. It shouldn't. I don't believe. People like to cut costs, but when you're cutting costs that affect people's safety, it's a very scary thing.
True, true. Excellent. Well, we'll dive right in and talk about not only that matter of safety, but how that reflects upon the community and its value.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, a resident, whether they're a single mother or father, an elderly person, a person with mobility issues, when they leave the house in the morning and they see John at the desk, they have a sense of comfort. He wishes them a great day, and they're on their way, and they feel, that their home is protected when they're gone. When they come back in the afternoon or evening and they see, Harry or Maggie, for that matter, it's routine. So they know who's there in the morning, they know who's there in the evening, and they're told have a great night, nice to see you, and they feel protected, they feel respected, and it's peace of mind that it's hard to explain until you actually experience it.
It's true. I've lived in a couple of condos. One did not have security, and the other one did. The one that did was a joy. We knew who was down there. One in particular would give high fives to my young son, and it really did build that sense of belonging, and you are happy to be home. So definitely see that as well.
Absolutely. I mean, there's a big difference between not having security and having security. And it's a huge difference. It's I hate when most people are like, well, nothing bad has happened, so we don't see the benefit of spending all this money
Right.
because we think our residents could take care of this themselves. Well, that's putting a lot of pressure on the residents to ask somebody that doesn't live there to leave. You don't know who this person is. You don't know what state of mind they're in. And frankly, it's a risk and it's dangerous. And I don't think any resident would want to do that. Some will take it upon themselves to get rid of someone that doesn't belong, but it's a risk. And until something bad happens, God forbid. And unfortunately, we've gained a lot of contracts because, frankly, they didn't listen until it was too late. And then, they didn't have a choice in the matter because, can lightning strike twice? Absolutely. Can it strike 3 times? More and more and more. And it's when you have a condominium of 100 units and more, it's a quality of life. People, think about this. People buy a condominium because it's safe. You don't have the danger factor and the safety issue of having a house where you have to protect every window, every alley. There's no risk of home invasions in a condo. I'll never say never, but the risk is very low of somebody breaking into your unit and harming you. It's very low because of the nature of the condominium and the common elements. The common elements are protected so that people can come in and go to your floor and enter your unit. Not to say it hasn't happened. I've never seen it, but of course it's happened. People come in all the time. They follow someone in. We call that tailgating. And
Right.
and that's and then you have no control. And a lot of buildings don't have restricted access to floors, so they can go up and down. And a lot of people don't lock their doors. I'm not going to lie. I live in a condominium. I have a dog, and when I walk the dog, I don't lock the door.
Right.
Nobody listened to that, but I lock my door every other
But
time.
you have that comfort and that security of traditionally most buildings have lockdown floors, and then there's the entry. And obviously, if you've got a guard there, you've got that dissuasion for somebody to tailgate, that slight disincentive for someone to be tempted to come in and either warm or cool themselves in your lobby. We have a lot of people who are homeless and across the country, and climates that at various times are unforgiving, and a lobby as a climate controlled space could be quite tempting. And I think that obviously having a physical presence is going to discourage that activity to a degree that those that are using just access control will not.
Well, I have that comfort, to not lock my door for the 20 minutes I'm gone. But you brought up an interesting issue, which is happening in one of my clients' buildings right now.
Right.
It's a boutique condominium on a main street in Toronto. So you do get it's a very nice street and a very upscale building, but because you're on a main street called Bloor Street West. I don't think I need to say anymore. You get some colorful people, and in the cold months, people are looking to get warm. And this building in particular, they've had issues where vagrants, unhoused, homeless, whatever you call them these days. I can't keep track, but they come into the foyer and they spend the night and they make themselves comfortable, and that's a big problem. The residents, have to climb over them. They don't wake up. And then you have situations where you have elderly people trying to get to their handicap bus, and they're in a walker and they can't get out, and there's no other way out. Yeah. So that's a problem. And this has been going on for months, and they've tried different types of technology like cameras and loudspeakers, but that's just that doesn't fix the problem. The problem is this building needs security at night. They need somebody. This building only has security until 7 p.m. and these people are coming in probably between 11 and 4 in the morning and staying till 7 in the morning.
Yeah.
And they don't want to spend the money. So I gave them another alternative. I said, okay, you don't want to spend another 6 hours, which, yes, it's expensive. It could add up. You add up, each month, you're talking, close to $10,000 for 2 months. So, it is a cost, but a permanent solution is to lock the door on the outside. A lot of people think, oh, you can't lock the door. Well, you could lock the door. So what we've done is we've had we've had the door basically is on a timer. So every night it locks from We change it all the time, but usually from like 10 p.m. to 6 in the morning. And
Right.
there's a code, a keypad outside that every resident knows, and
Mhm.
and everybody, it's locked, so you cannot get in.
Right.
It corrects the problem, and they still get
For
their
sure.
food. They can still, like they can give the delivery people their the code, or they can go down and meet the delivery person in the lobby. Not the biggest deal, but the problem has solved, and you know the unhoused people have all have all spoken about this, and they know, okay, this building is not a go-to building for us anymore. So
Right.
problem solved.
Do you find that that's a problem in a lot of communities where they don't have this overnight code entry, or is that becoming standard for those buildings, whether they have a guard or don't?
Unfortunately, it's becoming standard, especially in the downtown core and areas where they have open garages. These people, they get in and they go to the stairwells. You have some pretty really big buildings with 500 units, even 1,000 units. It's and even if they have security at night, it's this is still an ongoing problem. But the difference is when they have security at night, they're watching the cameras. The security guard is doing his patrol, and he or she will discover someone in the stairwell and they will remove them. And if they have issues removing them, they'll call the police. Plain and
Yeah.
simple.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And they're not in a rush to get somewhere, do something that this is their job. They're able to wait until they can get the response that they need. As you say, when you place that burden onto an owner, they may not have the flexibility to do that, and or be willing to put themselves into a position of personal safety or risk.
No,
Um,
I mean, we're very diligent in the way we train our staff on how to remove vagrants. It's not just, can you please leave? I mean, you're dealing with people that have severe mental illness, maybe schizophrenia. They could be high on drugs. There's a big opiate epidemic. I'm sure you've heard of that,
yeah,
and alcohol and stuff like that. So you really need to they need to learn how to talk to them on a level where they don't feel threatened. You know what I'm saying? It's like if you address a situation with aggression, you're going to get that in return. So
right.
you need to de-escalate the situation before it escalates, and properly talk to these people, get on their level. I often tell my staff, offer to buy them a sandwich if you have to. I'll pay for that. It's like you don't want to trigger these people. Offer to buy them a coffee. But
No,
then
and
yeah,
trying to be a good human as well. There are some pretty challenging weather circumstances. Some people might be hungry. The cost of a sandwich at the cost of against the cost, I guess, of having
look,
a
I mean,
situation.
you can handle these situations in many ways.
Yeah,
I always tell my guards to be smart, and if at the end of the day the best solution is giving this person $10 to leave, that works for me. The guard will
yeah,
be reimbursed, and he will be praised, because whatever it takes, that's a small price to pay.
good. Yeah, de-escalation for sure. And I think doing that and finding a good way to get somebody out could reduce some other, I guess, negative behavior that may attract itself to a community that um, doesn't handle it more or gracefully. And you think you see vandalism here on this slide. That's one issue. Obviously, the break-ins themselves are a big potential problem. Vehicle thefts are down in Canada this year. What has your team seen or experienced?
The same. It's up and down. I mean, we get a lot of obviously the parking structures are patrolled, but you have people breaking into cars, and in some
Mhm.
buildings you have grand theft auto operations where cars are stolen, they're parked where they shouldn't be parked. So there's a lot that goes into patrolling a parking lot and making sure that every car should be there, and that every car is in the right place,
Yeah,
and that visitors parking is properly monitored and properly booked.
true. Okay, so those are some of the security challenges. What makes a great security guard?
That's a great question. And that'll lead me into the term, it's not a good fit. I'm sure you've all heard that many times. I'm sure people have been let go from a job because they've been told, I'm sorry, it's just not a good fit. Well, that's a safe way to tell somebody that you don't like them at the end of the day, or that you just don't like being around them. This person could be very skilled, but for some reason they rub people the wrong way because of their personality. So, you know, when I say you're not the right fit, it's because your personality doesn't match where you want to work. And I always tell, my actually, at the end of the day, when we're interviewing people, we always ask them where they want to work. We're living in a time where, affordability is a big problem and everybody needs to work. And I get that. But when I ask you the question, where would you like to work? Don't tell me anywhere. I don't want to hear that. And, we have a variety of sites. We have, we cater to a lot of different industries. So be specific. Tell me you want to work at a luxury condominium behind a desk and tell me why. You could want to work there for many reasons. Tell me you want to work at a construction site where you're dirty and you don't have to deal with people and that's what you want. We have that. We can do that. So it's really important to really get to the core of where these people want to work. And once they tell me that, I can put them in the right place.
That makes a lot of sense, and we're all different. We have different degrees of sociability. We have different outlooks and communication skills and strengths, and some people thrive on being around others and having that engagement, and others would be better in either an industrial or construction or commercial operation where that may not be as prominent a part of the job.
But speaking about condominiums, when anybody gets hired, onto a team, an existing team, they're the outsider coming in. So they need to play well with others. They're the outsider. They need to
True.
compromise. Well, not compromise. They just need to adapt to the situation and to play nice with others. A condominium is the same thing. There's long-term residents. People they're coming into their home. Whenever I take a job at a condominium, I'm always like, thank you for letting us into your home, because it's their home. And, the right guard, on paper may not be the right guard in person.
Very true. I mean, you kind of look at this set of skills. I mean, integrity, reliability, vigilance, those are kind of core qualities of somebody that's good in security, but the communication, that adaptability, that matters a bit more in a close contact environment, a condo, etc. So
I mean,
I hear you for sure.
It's really, it's important to me. And this is how my company operates, is just because a guard gets his license at 18 or 19, they're not ready to take on the position of a condominium concierge. They're just too young. They're too young for a lot of different sites to work on their own. To work, the only way I would put somebody that is 19 is if they were working with somebody that was, 35 and up. So they could be mentored and they're not by themselves. Because putting someone that is, green, to say the least, they could be trained to be great, but they don't have the real life experience to really be there. And that's, and I'm not willing to have them, train on the job and risk, issues or residents being, unhappy.
Yeah, that emotional intelligence takes time to mature in most people as well, and makes a lot of sense. And that feeds into this whole development of character.
Yeah. I mean, the best employee for a condominium is somebody that's middle aged, even someone that's recently retired, that is
Mhm.
just is working because obviously they appreciate the money, but it's not so much that they need the money to survive. It's like, it's that they want to continue a lifestyle of waking up every morning, putting on a suit,
Mhm.
going to a community, being useful, being helpful. You know, retirement for a lot of people is not an easy thing. And those people that come to us, I'm more than happy to accommodate them, and they end up being probably like one of the best workers ever because they're so grateful and they're the perfect fit. You know, they're you know, in some senses they're very similar ages to our residents, and that the sense of connection that they have with them is really important.
Fantastic. I expect that that personality type would also be quite dependable and quite reliable, and how that kind of compounds with them having a good rapport
Mhm.
and a good sense of purpose. I see that completely.
But you know, besides the retired gentleman, um, the best people to put in a condominium, in my opinion, is again someone that has some real life experience, um, someone that is approachable and is likable, and
Mhm.
someone that, you know, residents will feel comfortable with. And that, you know, you don't want someone that's too talkative, that is going to, you know, be too personal. There's a fine line, you know. It's, you know, I train my staff, you know, to be respectful,
Yes.
and that means when somebody addresses you, you stand up. It's
Yeah.
as simple as that. When someone, especially an elder, you stand up. It's so disrespectful. And you know, when you see somebody coming, don't wait for them to ask you to open the door for them. Just go do it and
Mhm.
take them to the elevator. Press the button. You know, do everything to help them, except once you get to that threshold of the apartment, you know, they will probably ask you to come in and help them put the groceries away. Don't do it. Just, you
Right.
know, draw the line. You cannot do that. You know, it's a liability. And these people are very grateful. They're, again, a lot of them are older. They like the conversation, but they also want, you know, they also would like your help. But you can't go into their apartment. You can't start getting their medication for them. It's a liability. And you know, I just tell them,
Right.
like I say, it's against the rules. I'm not allowed.
Clear lines. That's another interesting point. I hadn't really considered this is not a job that I've done, and I can't really imagine what they've been requested, but I can see how it could extend into that. And
Oh,
you've got to have a
our
clear line.
guards have been propositioned for many, many things that some are acceptable. You know,
Right.
a lot of residents, you know, fly south for the winter and they want someone to look in on their apartment,
Mhm.
and they'll approach the guard, and if he or she is interested in just, you know, checking in on their space like every couple of weeks. And of course, my guards check with me, and I usually say that's fine. If they can make some extra money, no
Yeah.
problem. You know,
Mhm.
it's I've you know,
That's good.
you know, we encourage that, but that's like, you know, that's separate. It's not taking away from their job.
Mhm.
They're not doing it on the hours. They're doing it off hours,
Yeah.
and that's important.
That's a good point, and a nice opportunity for those that are in communities where that's common. And I have family that is in that snowbird category, and they do have house checkers for their home down south. So
Our guards go above and beyond, you know, and they check on their apartment, they start their cars, they get their cars washed, they help with,
oh,
you know,
nice.
management of you know, people coming in. Like they really, it's when you say concierge, that's what a real concierge is. Of course, this is not what a condo board is paying for. This is separate, but you know, it's, you know, we our staff will paint out of the lines. They will go above and beyond to make people happy, as long as it's done, you know, and doesn't take away from their real job.
Yes, and I understand that, and you can't have them off running errands, but doing what they can on site. As we've spoken, Brian, I'm getting a better sense of the types of different communication skills that are needed. Not only is it being able to handle someone that shouldn't be on the premises, but knowing the right level of engagement with those that live there as well, so that you don't come onto them too strongly and impede in their private lives, but you're there to respond. It's a delicate balance.
Look, it's a fine line. It's casual conversation, and you know, the residents might lead the conversation and probe questions because they're curious. And I just tell our guards, I was like, of course, answer them, but you don't have to be so informative in your answers. Where are you from? Are you currently going to school? They'll even ask if they're married or have kids. You could answer as to whatever you're comfortable answering.
Right.
But what we don't want is we don't want any awkward moments. So and people need to know how to read the room, and some people don't know how to read the room, and that's a problem. And again, that comes with experience and comes with the right fit for the right building.
Exactly. And they'll develop those skills if they stay in this job. They'll adapt and
Absolutely.
know how to engage with some of those different owners.
Yeah. At the end of the day, these guards become part of the family in the building, and they take care of them. So that comes over time.
How long does it take for a new guard to kind of feel like they're a part of a community in that way?
I would say at least 3 to 6 months. When you have a guard that is starting in a building they're usually replacing another company, another guard. They're being judged. They're being judged right away because they're not the same guard that was there, and it's unfortunate, but they take a lot of criticism. Residents will pick and prod, and they'll come up with many issues to complain about, and we have to address them. Sometimes they're unacceptable complaints. Sometimes, but most of the time they are reasonable, but it's because they don't know the guard. So they are, they're judging a book by its cover too quickly, and that's the truth.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's a good point. So obviously, keeping turnover down reduces that for the community and those living there. How is it that Sentry keeps that turnover down and assures that a good guard will stay with the community for the medium term?
Well, we give them, we give them their desired shift. So in a condominium, it's for 24-hour coverage, it's 7 in the morning till 3 p.m., 3 p.m. till 11 p.m., and then 11 to 7. So we give them their desired shift all the time, and we don't do rotating shifts. We also assign them a building that's close to where they live. We don't want somebody driving for 2 hours to get to work. They have to be within the TMZ. Max, I hate to put somebody more than half an hour, but Toronto, big cities, sometimes your half-hour commute becomes 45 minutes to an hour.
Absolutely.
But I hate that. But it happens. But we pay them a proper wage with bonuses. We do whatever if they're good, we want them to be happy. We want to nurture their careers too, right? Like,
absolutely.
We know who's with us for the long haul, and we know who's with us for a short term because they're pursuing other dreams, which we encourage.
Absolutely. No, this is an opportunity for them to gain some skills and to earn some income and to contribute while they can. And I also like to see people that work on our team move on to what they want to do at the right stage of their career.
Absolutely.
You've identified throughout our conversation this kind of concept of genuine care and how they're, kind of pushing to an acceptable level that job description to its edges to offer some slightly more concierge level service where it can fit around their core duties. How much does that get valued by the communities that you serve?
I think so. They should, communities should know that this is added value, and they shouldn't expect it. but they should definitely appreciate it. And most of them do. Most of them do. I mean, you rarely find a resident that is entitled and they expect this and they expect that, because that's not true. The condominium is paying for a service that doesn't include, carrying the groceries to your unit. It doesn't include picking up firewood for your fireplace. And a lot of companies don't encourage tipping. Well, we're not one of them. It's like the guard needs a tip if you're doing this, and they should be treated accordingly. We always say, give the tip to us. We'll distribute it to the guards because, we want it to be fair. But at the end of the day, a person should know if somebody is helping you out, just give them a $20 tip. Just do it. Like, it's like
something.
No one's going to say anything. It's like, you don't have to make something so formal, but, during Christmas, we in big buildings, we usually say, give it to us and we'll distribute it, because you have a lot of people and you don't want there to be jealousy amongst the staff.
For sure. And then you've got that shift issue where someone's got more daytime exposure to more of the community members and others.
Absolutely.
So I can see how that would be an issue. And you
Yeah.
want to treat everyone fairly and well. And I'm sure that, like any role in any job, there are some that do go above and beyond and earn their share of that extra consideration more than others.
Yeah, absolutely.
What do you find? We're a very multicultural society. We've got a note here on cultural awareness. We've got a huge range of ages, ethnicities in our communities across this country. How do you handle that within your communities, and how do your guards respond when there's potentially some differences in cultural awareness?
Well, that's a very good question and something that we could talk about for hours, but I'll address it as politically correct as possible. But please keep in mind, the reality is it's not politically correct.
Yeah.
And you can't even try. It's like we have a very colorful, country mixed with different colors, religions, and so forth, and sometimes that's a problem in certain communities because they're not comfortable with that community. And we don't hire based on color. We hire based on if you're a good person, but you may not be the right person for this community. I'll find the right community for you. We don't. These people have to be. They can't wear strong religious garments. It's just. It's very delicate, because people aren't comfortable with that.
That's understandable.
I've been asked that question many times, and I give them a straight answer. It's just like this is not. They want to see your face. They don't want your face to be covered. It's as simple as that. You wouldn't be allowed to go through an airport security with your face covered. You wouldn't be allowed. So. It's the same thing in a condominium. You need to show your face, or
I can see that.
Or we put you in a condominium that caters to that community. We don't want to scare the old lady that's over 80. I'm not. Racism exists in this country. No matter what people are racist. It exists. And, we want to make people tolerant and we want to educate them, but you're not going to teach an old dog new tricks. Okay. I've gotten calls saying, I have a lot of workers, and I've gotten calls saying that they're terrified of this person because their eyes are very dark and they're terrified. And it's like, I don't fire this person at all because of their color of their skin. I handled this with care. I talk to this lady directly. I tell her what I do is I tell her about this person. This person is married with 3 kids. His father is a doctor. His mother is a judge. I give her some background. So there's no reason to be scared. This person comes from good stock.
Yeah.
So, you're again, they're judging a book by its cover before they actually read the book. And that works by my staff appreciates that, and these people appreciate that. At the end of the day, if one person out of 300 people, are giving you a problem, that's a good day, because in a condominium you can't make everyone happy. People in
Wait,
customer service, there's never compliments, there's complaints. And
yeah.
that's reality. It's when there no news is the best news. But in this industry, you rarely get a compliment, but you get a lot of complaints, and that's just the nature of the beast.
There are a lot of, industries where that can apply, but no more than something like this where you're frontline. We obviously see a lot of property management firms and managers, and again, there's a huge amount of work and goodwill that gets built up, but you only hear, about those situations where things didn't go the way that someone expected.
Yeah.
So I thank you for answering that question delicately. It's a complicated one in, such a multicultural society, and,
But
there
at the end of the day, which I didn't touch on,
Mhm.
when we start a new condominium, you have leeway. You usually have 30 to 60 days before you start. So you can take your time to assemble the right team. You
Right.
you don't just have to dispatch any available guard. You could take your time, assemble the right team, make the dynamic right, mix it up. You can add whatever color you want, but you can assemble the right team, and
Great idea.
and that helps. And there's no reason not to be able to do that.
Absolutely. You've actually kind of tied together a whole bunch of different considerations as you're building that team, finding the right personality, finding those that live in the right neighborhood, so that they can get to work without a massive commute, making sure that it meets the expectations of those communities that you serve, and then having that kind of overlap across when you've got a 24-hour guard presence. Brings up another question for me, Brian, actually. What percentage of yours have a daytime versus a 24-hour guard? And what do you see as the trade-offs other than cost that everyone's considering?
Well, it's a big cost difference. A 24/7 building can cost about $250,000.
Right.
An 8-hour shift, 7 days a week will cost you like under 100. So
Yeah.
it's a big, big difference.
Big difference.
And but it's finding the right balance. It's 24/7 is a great luxury to have. It's nice, but you know we work with condo boards, we work with the property managers to give them the right balance of security. We audit the property to find out what they actually need. Because again, there's concierge duties from like 7 a.m. till 3 p.m. or whatever you want, or just the day shift. Where they're taking in packages, they're dealing with building issues, and then there's strict security patrolling and whatnot, in the evening. So
Yeah.
it's that balance of what your building actually
I
needs.
need. We've gotten to the About Century slide. Maybe you can tell us a bit more about where you serve and the work that you do.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we serve the province of Ontario. We serve the from north to south, but uh, our primary area is Ottawa and the Greater Toronto area. Our focus is on that. We won't take a job that our presence isn't you know um, if we don't have people there, you can't manage a contract. It's
Of
so
course.
I won't take a job unless we have people to actually manage the contract.
Mhm. Wonderful. And you do serve a range of different community types, obviously, as well as doing some other commercial industrial work. Um, you know, what should you say? We've got some differentiators there listed, but what do you say is different about Century versus some of your peers?
I mean, really, that we pride ourselves on a company that gives you security that you can verify, that you're getting what you pay for. You know, every client could could guarantee see that they're getting exactly what they're paying for. When something happens, a report is drawn up. There's proof. There's pictures, like, like everything. Our guards are tracked by this GPS technology, which is quite amazing.
Mhm.
We're always watching. In our, like, it's technology is quite amazing. So, you know, we give our guards that technology too to do their job, and the client, can see exactly what they're doing when they're doing it, which is wonderful on us, because, back in the early day, we'd get calls, and the main question is like, this happened, where the hell was your guard?
Yeah, no kidding.
Or
Yeah,
your guard was sleeping. I mean,
yeah.
these are human beings. At the end of the
Mhm.
day, a human
Absolutely.
being will fail you. You can't. Nothing is foolproof,
Mhm.
but we can develop and implement as many systems as possible that are fail safe to prevent that from happening. And one of those things are, you know, having the guard monitored every 30 minutes, having the guard being, randomly supervised and checked in on,
Yeah,
to keep them on their toes. Because a sleeping guard is a bad guard. Let's be honest with you. They need to be awake.
yeah, yeah. No doubt about that. And there are huge range of different things depending on whether they're monitoring a front desk or whether they're on patrol, or they've got sites that they're looking after, whether they're doing some enforcement. Does your team do parking enforcement as well?
We do. We do that really well. We have some
Excellent.
great clients that really appreciates it. Because we go in there, and our guards are licensed in certain municipalities, and they also work with bystander officers, and they'll tag and tow every vehicle, however long it takes. There's many types of vehicles,
Mhm.
very challenging vehicles, and we have a lot of commercial clients that, people are just parking in a parking lot,
Yeah.
and taking the subway. So there's many challenges, and we handle that well.
Wonderful. Well, for everyone that's looking for some more information, there's a QR code you can scan, the URL that you can visit, sentrysecurity.group.ca. We've been joined today by Bryan. I'd like to thank you for joining us, telling us a little bit more about the considerations that all owners in condo communities should be considering, and Sentry's unique approach to ensuring that there's a great fit. Did you have anything you'd like to share with us as we close?
No, it was great to be a guest with you. Thank you for having me as well. And
Absolutely.
yeah, I hope I answered most of your questions. And yeah,
You
I'm good.
did. Thank you, Bryan. And Condo Talk will return. I thank you all for your time. And thanks, Bryan. We'll see you again soon.